Hi everyone, it's Rebecca here on Mindstone, just tuning in for another session. So just so you know, for those who don't know Mindstone is my digital platform where I share all my coping mechanisms and strategies that help me deal with my anxiety, depression, and bipolar disorder. We cover a range of topics that help us regulate our emotions, our thinking, our behaviors, how to deal with our symptoms, as well as how to stay productive and motivated towards our goals so that we can become functional, happy, and healthy. I put out videos every Monday and Thursday evening around 7:30, so definitely tune in there. I'm constantly accepting feedback, and all of my content topics surround the needs of our community in the anxiety, depression, and bipolar disorder community. So all of my topics are from my fans and from my community members. So if you do have any topic ideas, or you would like to comment or send some feedback or tell me a little bit more about how you cope with your symptoms, I'm always all ears and I love to hear from you. So I'm going to cover how to regulate your emotions. So this will be a video about emotional regulation. This is backed by popular demand. I've heard a lot of people in my community really looking to find out how they can control their negative emotions so they can control their emotions so that their emotions don't control them. So it's all about controlling your emotions so they don't control you. And so the way that we can do that is definitely through what's called dialectical behavioral therapy. And so this is actually a therapy that was coined by Marsha Linehan, which I will put a link on this video at the bottom there, so you can read a little bit more about it. And so what she says is that there's a way for us to actually look at our emotional states of mind, take a step back, and actually shift our mindset towards one that's a lot healthier and that will allow us to better our relationships, better our self-control, and also better our self-esteem and our love for ourselves, because it allows us to do a number of things when we're able to take control of our emotions. So first pro that I'll mention is being able to relieve stress and emotional stress. So we're able, when we can regulate our emotions effectively, we're not acting reactively to situations and negative situations in our lives. So when something happens, we're not immediately going into emotional mind state. So there's three states of mind with dialectical behavioral therapy. There's emotional mind, reasonable mind, and what's called wise mind. And so I'm going to dive into those three right now. So the first one, of course, is emotional mind. So this is when we start to feel our anxiety attacks, our panic attacks. This is when we can experience some palpitations. We might be in a bout of anger. We might be in a bout of anxiety or fear. And so all of our behavior that's driven by those emotions is very reactive and very impulsive. And there's a lot of issues when it comes to that. A lot of us that feel like we're not in control of our emotions may actually engage in risky behavior and reactive behavior that we generally regret after we've calmed down from our emotional peaks and valleys. And so dialectical behavioral therapy allows us to regulate those emotions so that we're not prey to our emotions and we don't involve ourselves in behavior that we'll later regret and berate ourselves for. We don't want to go into that rabbit hole, because whenever we behave out of pure emotion, it's usually decision making that is not based on facts, not based on objective truth. And a lot of the time, it's, like I said, very reactive. And a lot of the time, it's not rational, and it doesn't make for good relationships. So a lot of us that feel like we are mood dependent, and that our behavior and that our days and our weeks and our months are all dependent on our mood, a lot of the time it can make us feel very helpless, and it can make us feel very much out of control of our behavior and our actions. Which, of course, by extension, makes us feel very powerless and helpless in terms of maintaining our relationships and making sure that those are healthy, along with our depiction of ourselves, because a lot of the time we also shame ourselves when we involve ourselves in impulsive and sometimes self-destructive behavior on account of our emotions. So that's our emotional mind. We want to be able to distance ourselves from our emotional mind. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, we have a reasonable mind. This reasonable mind is definitely driven by logic, pragmatics, data, statistics, and a lot of very much hard empirical data. It's the type of mind the type of mind that we use when we're dealing with numbers, or we're even dealing with logic, or we're dealing with any kind of study or practice that involves problem solving, that involves conflict resolution, and doesn't really take into account any emotions or any kind of emotional responses to that line of work or to that practice or to that process. So that's our reasonable mind. What we want to actually be in is what Marsha Linehan calls our wise mind. Our wise mind is when we actually are both aware and accepting of the emotions that come with a certain situation, while at the same time having an eye on the solutions that can come up and ways that we can actually solve the problem, while at the same time being sensitive, mindful, aware, and accepting of the emotions that we're experiencing. So we never want to repress our emotions, and we never want to pretend like they're not there. We want to be aware of them, we want to be able to accept them, but we also want to be able to distance ourselves enough that we can actually focus on solving the problem versus just feeling it. So this is a precise marriage of both feeling and thinking. We want to be feeling and thinking at the same time. So one of the best examples that I can think of for practicing wise mind is for us to imagine our perfect therapist. So if we were to be a therapist for ourselves, we wouldn't technically want a therapist that is driven only by emotion. So imagine if you had a therapist where every time you get into her office or his office and you discussed, your points of concern, you discussed your issues, and that therapist just took it very personally and started bursting out into tears. That wouldn't be the most helpful form of counseling because you never want to be with someone else that, definitely does feel what you're feeling, but when it comes to actually solving the issue or coming to the root of the issue or trying to find some kind of resolution to actually help you move forward, you wouldn't want someone to be driven only by emotion and very little on rationality or, very little on any kind of solutions that could help you through. You also wouldn't want a therapist that is driven primarily just on reasonable mind. That kind of therapist would play out to be the kind of person that listens to your emotions and just says, it doesn't make sense for you to feel this way. 65% of people going through this situation doesn't feel that way, so you shouldn't feel that way. It's the kind of person that, looks at the facts and the figures, but doesn't actually have the sympathy or the empathy to hear you out and feel what you're feeling. So what we want to do is we want to be the therapist for ourselves that practices wise mind. And so the first part of practicing wise mind is self-awareness, right? So we want to be aware of what we're feeling. We also want to be accepting. So we want to be accepting of what we're feeling. We also want to be accepting of the situation that we're in. So if we're in a sticky situation, we want to be present and accepting of that situation. So we're not berating ourselves, we're not judging ourselves, we're just saying very plainly, this is what my situation is right now. It is very frustrating. There is a way for us to solve this issue. So let's focus on solving this issue while being aware and accepting of the fact that it could be very frustrating and it could be negatively affecting our emotions. But we are taking the choice to practice wise mind. So that's just the tip of the iceberg for dialectical behavioral therapy. One of the first steps, like I mentioned, is awareness. Second step is acceptance. And third step is assessing our situation in a non-judgmental way. So being able to assess the situation, accepting it for what it is, and being focused on solution making, and being able to come to a decision that is well thought out and at the same time aware and accepting of the emotions that come with it. So like I said, that's the first type of the iceberg. I will be doing another video on Monday, which will be part 2 of dialectical behavioral therapy. We'll move into more of a mindfulness. So how to actually get yourself from a very high emotional peak of a surge of emotion, whether that be anger, anxiety, or fear, how to get yourself down back to a healthy baseline so that you can practice this strategy of changing our mindset from emotional mind into our wise mind. So I'd love to hear your feedback. If you have any questions, comments, you like to hear or watch any other topics surrounding mindfulness, dialectical behavioral therapy, or just ways to cope with your anxiety and depression, do not be shy, and definitely post your comments below, and I will be happy to cover any topics that you deem worthy of discussing. This is again Rebecca from Mindstone. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I wish you an excellent new year if you're celebrating the new year. And once again, love yourself, love your life, and again, thank you for tuning into Mindstone. Don't forget to subscribe as we do videos every Monday and Thursday evening. All the best and take care.